Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. Unified Super Bantamweight champion Ellie Scottney, ahead of her upcoming fight with fellow champion Jamie Mercado, was asked about the potentiality of defending her titles against Skye Nicolson, to which she replied, "Do I have a new contender in Skye Nicolson? Well, I've got the biggest fight of my career ahead of me, and I'm on the path to undisputed. That means I will be moving on to the champions only. If she's got her hands on a belt, then yeah, that's someone I'll be looking to fight."
It would seem that Ellie Scottney is trying to put it as politely as possible that unless Skye Nicholson's got a belt, she's not on her radar.
Skye Nicolson, who will be returning to action early next month on the 5th on the undercard of Catterall versus Eubank opposite the Ring Bolivia zone, Carla Gonzalez. And what is her very first fight since her upset loss to Tiara Brown, who is in no hurry to give Skye a crack at the apple. She doesn't want to give her a rematch, so Skye's moving on.
Moving down.
Against a nondescript Bolivian fighter who has a record of 9-3,
with no draws.
8 knockouts, having been knocked out 2 times in 12 professional bouts.
Coming off of 3 consecutive victories.
To Skye Nicolson, who's coming off a loss, sporting a professional record of 12 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 1 recorded knockout, having never been knocked out in 13 professional bouts on the bounce, and looking to become a 2-weight world champion.
Can she do it?
Well, Ellie Scottney has set the rules of engagement. If she beats Jamie Mercado, there is but 1 belt to collect, and that's Mayeli Flores' belt, the WBA title. Mayeli Flores, who's said to be going into an immediate rematch with the former champion, Nazarena Romero.
Skye will presumably be targeting the winner unless Ellie Scottney beats her to the punch.
Skye, who must first make it past Carla Gonzalez. Being honest with you, because Skye is on the bounce and because this fighter already has 3 professional losses, 2 of them by way of knockout, I already expect Skye to win this fight. I expect that Skye should make it past Carla, and when she does, things will get a bit more serious. What are Skye's chances against either Mayeli Flores or Nazarena Romero?
Well, those 2 fighters present the same challenges to Skye that Tiara Brown presented to Skye. They're very aggressive, they like to come forward, and they like to throw punches in bunches.
The difference being that these fighters are not as long and limber as Tiara Brown. You know, Mayeli Flores is practically a garden gnome, and Nazarena Romero, she's a little taller, but she's short and stout too. Skye Nicolson would likely have a height and reach advantage over both of these fighters, but stylistically, she would still be at a disadvantage. That is, unless she learns to pick up the pace, pick up her work rate, and learns to box on the inside. As it stands, that still appears to be Skye Nicholson's Achilles heel.
She's very economic with her output, very careful, and she doesn't like to sit in the pocket for too long. And if that doesn't change, she's gonna be a deer in the headlights every time that happens. Every time some girl comes busting through the front door, crashes the pocket, she's gonna tense up and get outworked. That's what happened in the Tiara Brown fight, and that's what will continue to happen if she doesn't expand her horizons. It's a bit hard to imagine that you could keep either Mayeli Flores or Nazarena Romero off of you, just throwing 1 and 2 punches at a time from the outside. These are very persistent fighters, very aggressive.
But that's what she's gonna have to go through if she wants to get Ellie Scottney's attention. Otherwise, she could end up staying stuck playing the waiting game, waiting until such a time as Ellie moves up, vacates all her titles, at which point, then Sky can fight for one of them.
One of the vacant ones.
But of course, there's a lot more prestige in beating a champion in order to be a champion than just fighting for a vacant title or having one emailed to you. It's good that Sky didn't wait too long to come back, though. She suffered that loss to Tiara Brown earlier this year in March, and just like that in July, she's right back in the mix. So it's good that she didn't sit on that loss and allow it to fester,
But I still don't like the optics of this. Moving down in weight so soon after a loss when you could have went after Nina Menka.
could have tried to get her IBF title, and if you win, you could then go back to pursuing Tiara as a unification match. The way it looks like Tiara ran you out of the division.
I don't like that.
But it just is what it is. Tiara won't give Sky a rematch, and Sky's not going to wait around up until she does. She's moving on and moving down and aspires to become a two-weight world champion. Let's see if she can. In men's middleweight news, Eddie Hearn urges the BBBOC to rethink their weight-making rules.
As it pertains to the Chris Eubank Jr. versus Benn fight and their potential rematch.
The BBBOC are to assemble a panel of experts to discuss safe and effective weight-making practices for fighters. The issue has gained traction following the board's demand for Chris Eubank Jr. to explain his alleged use of a sauna before his bout against Benn on April 26th at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Videos surfaced during Fight Week showing Eubank's efforts to meet the 160-pound middleweight limit. It's alleged that he used the sauna to aid in his weight cut, a practice banned by the BBBOC, though reportedly used discreetly by some fighters in the past. Eubank Jr. is scheduled to appear before the board next month to clarify his actions. And I don't know why Chris did it.
Yes, you do. He was trying to cultivate sympathy, but in doing so, he incriminated himself, and now the BBBOC wants answers.
Eubank officially weighed in at 160 pounds and delivered a thrilling victory over Benn. A rematch potentially set for September or October is under discussion, with weight-making protocols likely to resurface if Eubank is required to make 160 pounds again. Eddie Hearn, who revealed to Boxing News that he was fined by the board years ago for comments on saunas and weight-making, stressed the need for a comprehensive review of the process. I think what the board need to do is have some kind of forum with 5 or 6 of the top nutritionists and weight-making experts in the country to just talk about some solutions around that. Also, earlier weigh-ins on the Friday, because Matchroom shows weigh-in at 1 p.m., but in America, we're doing weigh-ins at 9 a.m. Those extra few hours make a massive difference to a fighter rehydrating. These are all things to talk about. I think that we've just got to keep evolving.
It's a goddamn difference between a weigh-in at 9 a.m. and a weigh-in at 1 p.m.
May seem minuscule to me and you, but to the fighters, weighing in at 9 a.m. at the beginning of the day gives that fighter more time to replenish themselves, more time to rehydrate and have a meal, maybe 2, 3.
It matters.
What Eubank did was he wanted to show the world what a terrible thing this was, that he was fighting at his championship weight and how brutal it was for him. And in return, the board said, you've got to come and explain yourself for what you were doing to make that weight. Was he doing anything wrong? Let's be honest, not really. Fighters have to find a way to make the weight. They've got to do it safely, and they've got to do that under the advice of their team. But can they do that without water manipulation? Ask any scientist that you know, is there a fighter that doesn't manipulate his water and his hydration to make weight? Very, very few.
The whole hang-up with saunas and sauna suits is the BBBOC doesn't want fighters depleting themselves to critical levels just to make weight.
Because even if the fighters can make weight using these practices, they are severely malnourished. They are depleted, which is less than ideal for a fighter to then go into a fight. What is the industry standard almost everywhere else in the world is banned in the United Kingdom. And Chris, looking for sympathy, gave it away that that's what he was doing.
Shot himself in the foot.
Now, the reason that I don't feel sorry for him is having to make 160 pounds was not something that was exclusive to the Conor-Benn fight. No, the other options that were on the table, a fight with Erislandy Lara or a fight with Hamza Shiraz, all would have still required Chris to make 160. So if it's that goddamn hard, why don't you just move up?
Doesn't want to get his ass kicked. He knows he can't hack it as a super middleweight against top-level super middleweights.
Now, the latest from Eddie Hearn seems to indicate that the Eubank between Chris and Conor is set to get a new date. There appears to have been a change to the slated date for the rematch between Chris and Conor. The pair clashed back in April at London's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in one of the biggest fights on British shores in recent times. They reignited a family rivalry that began when their fathers, Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn, battled it out in an entertaining contest. It was seen as a mesmeric occasion, with both fathers present. Eubank Sr., somewhat surprisingly, for the clash, their sons delivered and slugged it out for 12 highly entertaining rounds, with Eubank Jr. made the winner via a unanimous decision, though based on this visit to the board.
Their investigation as to how Chris got to 160, you have to wonder what effect that's going to have on Chris's win. Would they overturn it if they find him in violation of any of their protocols?
What's the worst case scenario here?
Benn did himself no harm with his performance. After he had mainly competed at welterweight during his career, he impressed everyone with his first showing at 160. So much so that many called for more after the contest and talks of a rematch began. Both men had signed for a rematch before the end of the first contest. It was just a matter of where and when. September 27th was the rumored date back at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, although the recent Premier League fixture has put an end to that. Spurs are scheduled to face Wolverhampton Wanderers at home on that date. Benn's promoter, Matchroom's Eddie Hearn, was asked what date the contest could now be moved to in light of the Premier League fixture announcement.
I think the 20th of September, October 4th, it's down to Turkey El Sheikh, Hearn told Boxing Scene. So we're talking with the Saudis yesterday, and they'll make a decision soon. You know, September 20 is, I think, 10 weeks on Saturday, so it's almost time to return to camp.
The only question I have is, what bearing will this hearing that Chris is about to have on the rematch? What's the worst case scenario? Because it would seem that in fishing for sympathy and showing how difficult it was for him to get down to 160, he's got all the wrong attention now.
Does this in any way jeopardize the rematch? Will the contracted weight of the fight have to be changed as a result of that hearing? Does it throw a monkey wrench into the whole goddamn thing? These are questions that need answers.
Yeah. If Canelo couldn't knock out Charlo, or you really think that he's going to knock out Crawford?
Well, it is true. Canelo didn't knock out Jermell Charlo, but that's largely in part to Jermell Charlo staying away from Canelo for all 36 minutes, and unless Terence Crawford plans on employing that strategy...
Which he says he doesn't.
It's not a good parallel. Bringing up a guy that Canelo Alvarez beat comprehensively because the guy wouldn't engage, is that supposed to be a parallel for Crawford? And how he's gonna fight? A veteran boxing scribe Ryan O'Hara said something similar. He said Canelo hasn't scored a knockout in 7 straight fights because he telegraphs every punch and doesn't set up shots like he used to. He's been in a lot of fights. This is a risky bout against Crawford.
Is that why Canelo's not stopping guys anymore? Because he keeps giving it away what he's gonna throw?
He's telegraphing his punches and the guys know what to avoid? I think there's something to be said about that, but I think there's more to be said about his opponents and how they approach him, or how they don't. When you talk about Canelo Alvarez not knocking anybody out in about 7 fights, do mention that he's knocked a good number of these guys down. The power didn't go anywhere. The power is still there, and if these guys ain't get stopped, it's because they chose not to deal with it. It's because they chose not to trade with him. They chose to stay away.
Last 7 fights, I think he's knocked all 7 of those guys down. He knocked down John Ryder, he knocked down Jaime Munguia, He knocked down Edgar Berlanga. He forced Jermell Charlo to take a knee.
The only guy he didn't drop, the only guy he didn't knock down was William Skull in his last fight, but you see how William fought. Crawford better not fight like that unless he wants to lose.
The bottom line is, when you talk about Canelo Alvarez not knocking somebody out in a long time, it's not because the power's not there. The power is still there, and that's why all those guys ran from it. Guys that are bigger than Canelo, bigger than Crawford.
With more height, more length, longer legs that make for longer strides, they elected not to deal with the power at all. So what hope does Terence Crawford have of dealing with that same power? I heard somebody say they think that Crawford will fight how Dimitri Bivol fought. It's not a bad shout, to be honest, but the issue with that kind of a strategy for Terence Crawford is Terence is not a light heavyweight. He's not as big a man as Dimitri Bivol.
Nope.
Not a carbon copy of him either. A part of why that pendulum step that Dimitri Bivol uses was so effective against Canelo wasn't just because it's a pendulum step, it's because he's a bigger man than Canelo Alvarez. Taller and longer. Longer legs that make for longer strides. In a few steps, he covers more ground than Canelo, whereas Terence, he's eye level.
He doesn't tower over him the way that Dimitri Bivol did. And he's not a light heavyweight, so we don't know that he can endure what Canelo throws at him. That's a wild card.
Ahead of the Canelo versus Bivol fight, I told you guys here on this channel that I didn't think Canelo could hurt Dimitri. I didn't think he could put a dent in him. The most he could hope to do was win the rounds on activity, because I didn't think Canelo could hurt him. And he didn't.
But that doesn't apply to Terence Crawford the way it applied to Dimitri, because Terence isn't naturally bigger than Canelo. He's new to this weight. He's been out for over a year, 37 going on 38 years old.
So to suggest that Dimitri Bivol laid a blueprint on how to beat Canelo Alvarez, you need the ingredients, you need the tools to execute that plan the way Dimitri executed that plan. And as great as Terence Crawford is, he don't got the tools for that. He's not a light heavyweight.
I just don't think that Terence Crawford's plan of action will be similar to Dimitri's. Those two guys are built different.
I'm expecting Terence's plan of action to look more like Floyd Mayweather's plan of action when he fought Canelo Alvarez years ago. Staying mid-range to inside, slipping and countering, rolling and countering.
Because he has longer arms, he'll stay just outside of striking distance of Canelo or try to work off the counter. That doesn't even mean that plan is going to work. But if I had to guess what Crawford's strategy is going to be, I think that'd be it.
Do what Floyd Mayweather did years ago. Of course, the issue with that is Floyd fought a much younger and much greener Canelo Alvarez than the one that's here today. Remember that going in, Floyd was the more experienced fighter. Floyd was more experienced than Canelo, where Terence Crawford is not.
Canelo is more experienced than him at a higher level for a longer duration of time. Who's the best guy that Crawford fought? Spence?
Cotto. Miguel Cotto is a more elite level guy than Errol Spence. Gennady Golovkin.
Not only are these guys more elite than Errol Spence Jr., they are more durable fighters, more proven.
I'm just saying, any way I think about this fight, from any angle, it seems an uphill battle for Terence Crawford. There is a lot that is working against him. So before you harp about how Canelo hasn't knocked anybody out in a long time,
don't overlook how these guys react to his power. Don't overlook that he knocked most of these guys down, and most of these guys that are bigger than Bud, they literally ran from him.
Will Terence Crawford run from him? Is that what he will resort to when he feels the power? We'll see.